June 18th, 1815. 11:35 in the morning. A Belgian farm named Hougemont is on fire. Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who crowned himself emperor, who conquered most of Europe, who escaped exile and rebuilt an army in 100 days just to get back here, is standing on a ridge, watching 73,000 of his soldiers prepare for the single most important attack of his life. He doesn't know it yet, but by nightfall, this field will end him. Not just this battle, his entire career, his empire, his legend. Waterloo isn't just a defeat. It's the full stop at the end of Napoleon's sentence. Now freeze that moment. Because we're about to drop 41 Delta Force operators into that exact morning, with one job: get through 73,000 soldiers across an active battlefield and capture the most powerful man in Europe alive. Most videos like this jump straight to the gunfight. We're not going to do that, because the real answer to this question isn't about who has the better rifle. It's about something almost nobody talks about when they cover Waterloo, and it changes everything. Let's be honest about something first. Capturing Napoleon isn't like capturing some random general. This is arguably the single most heavily guarded, most tactically brilliant military mind Europe had produced in a century. On the one day of his life, he was most paranoid and most prepared. Napoleon didn't just have soldiers. He had the Imperial Guard, his personal elite force, hand-picked veterans who had fought beside him for over a decade, sworn to die before letting harm reach him. Historians still describe the Imperial Guard as one of the most feared units in European history. These weren't conscripts. These were the best soldiers Napoleon had, standing between him and anyone who wanted him dead or captured. So here's the real question underneath the question. Can 41 modern soldiers get through not just an army, but through history's most loyal bodyguard? Here's where this gets interesting, and where I think most versions of this video get it wrong. Everyone assumes the advantage is the M4 rifle versus the flintlock musket. And sure, that gap is real. A Delta Force operator can fire faster, further, and more accurately than any soldier standing on that field in 1815 by a distance that isn't even close. But that's not actually the advantage that matters most. The advantage that matters most is information Napoleon didn't have about his own battle. Historians agree Napoleon lost Waterloo for a specific, well-documented reason. He was waiting for reinforcements, Marshal Grouchy's forces, who never arrived in time, while the Prussian army, under Blücher, arrived on the battlefield exactly when Napoleon least expected them, tipping the entire battle against him in the final hours. 41 modern soldiers with even basic modern communication and geographic awareness would know exactly where every army on that field actually was in real time. Napoleon was making decisions blind. A Delta Force team wouldn't be. That means before a single shot is fired at Napoleon himself, this team already has an advantage no army on that field, on either side, actually possessed that day: the truth. So how does a 41-man team actually cross an active 19th century battlefield to reach one man surrounded by tens of thousands of soldiers? You don't march up the middle. That's the mistake almost every version of this scenario makes. You use exactly what makes Delta Force different from a regular infantry unit in the first place. They're not built for open combat. They're built for precision infiltration. Waterloo's battlefield was chaotic, smoke-filled, and disorganized by early afternoon. Black powder muskets create enormous clouds of smoke with every volley, reducing visibility across the field to a matter of meters at times. That chaos, which worked against 19th century commanders trying to coordinate thousands of men, becomes cover for a small, modern unit trained specifically to move undetected through confusion. Split into small infiltration teams, using the smoke and terrain, the sunken road near La Haye-Sainte, the dense hedgerows around Hougemont, 41 operators could realistically work their way toward Napoleon's command position at Le Caillou without ever engaging the main battle lines directly. This is the part almost nobody explains right. The goal was never to fight 73,000 men. It was to avoid fighting 73,000 men entirely and get close enough that firepower and surprise do the rest. Here's where it gets real. At some point, this team meets the Imperial Guard. Not the whole army, just the small, elite ring of soldiers physically closest to Napoleon at any given moment. This is the actual fight that decides everything, not the battle happening in the background. The Imperial Guard fought with muskets that took, on average, 15 to 20 seconds to reload by a trained soldier, meaning one shot, then a long, vulnerable pause. A Delta Force operator's rifle empties and reloads a magazine in a matter of seconds, with vastly superior range and accuracy in the process. In a direct, close-range engagement between a modern precision unit and even history's most elite 19th century infantry, this isn't a fair fight. It's not close. The rate of fire gap alone means a small, disciplined modern team could neutralize a numerically larger Guard detachment before the Guard gets more than one volley off. But here's the twist that most people miss. Napoleon himself wasn't a coward, and he wasn't stupid. Historical accounts describe him as calm, calculating, even in the chaos of a collapsing battle. If he realizes capture is imminent and escape isn't possible, the most historically consistent version of Napoleon doesn't panic. He negotiates, stalls, or attempts to slip away using the very chaos that got the team close to him in the first place. This is the part every version of this video conveniently skips, and it's the most important part of the entire scenario. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the team actually reaches Napoleon and takes him. Now what? You're 41 men in the middle of an active battlefield, holding the single most valuable hostage in European history, surrounded by tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides who will absolutely not let that happen without a fight. French soldiers won't let their emperor be taken without dying trying. And depending on how this news spreads, Wellington's own coalition forces might have their own reasons to want Napoleon captured personally rather than let a mystery force walk off with him. Extraction, not capture, is the actual hardest part of this mission. History is full of successful infiltrations that turned into disasters on the way out. Getting in undetected is one problem. Getting out with a fighting, resisting, world-famous hostage through the same battlefield you just crossed, now fully alerted and searching for you, is a different problem entirely. This is where the honest answer to our title question gets complicated. Based on real historical conditions, smoke cover, battlefield chaos, weapon technology gaps, and Napoleon's actual Guard structure, here's the most historically grounded answer. Getting close to Napoleon, highly plausible. The chaos of Waterloo, combined with a small, modern infiltration-focused unit, gives this team a real, defensible path to Napoleon's position that doesn't require fighting the entire French army. Neutralizing the Imperial Guard in a direct, close-range fight, overwhelmingly likely to succeed. The technological gap between 1815 muskets and modern rifles isn't a close contest under any realistic model. Getting out alive, with Napoleon captured, before the entire French army mobilizes to stop them. This is the true coin flip. Even the most disciplined, best-equipped 41-man team in the world is still 41 men, with finite ammunition, deep inside hostile, unfamiliar 19th century terrain, with no extraction vehicle, no air support, and thousands of increasingly desperate soldiers between them and safety. Here's the part of this video that actually matters more than the tactical breakdown. If this mission succeeds, if Napoleon is captured mid-battle instead of surrendering weeks later as he did in real history, it doesn't just change one battle. It potentially prevents the actual final chapter of Napoleon's life, his exile to the remote island of St. Helena, where he lived out his final 6 years essentially isolated from the world, and where he ultimately died in 1821. A version of history where Napoleon is captured on the battlefield itself by a completely unknown force nobody in 1815 could explain doesn't just rewrite a military outcome. It creates one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in modern history. A missing emperor, a battlefield full of witnesses who saw something no 19th century mind could explain, and a legend that would have echoed through history very differently than the one we actually got. So, could 41 Delta Force soldiers have captured Napoleon at Waterloo? Reaching him? Yes, almost certainly. using the very chaos that defined the real battle, defeating the men guarding him. Yes, decisively, and probably faster than anyone in 1815 could comprehend. Getting out alive, mission complete, before an empire's worth of loyal soldiers close in around you. That's the part history can't answer for us, because it's the one part of this scenario that was never actually tested on that field or on any field like it, ever. And maybe that's the more interesting question to sit with. Not whether 41 modern soldiers could beat 1815 technology, they obviously could, but whether even the best soldiers in the world can truly outrun history once they're standing inside it. If you want to see this same team try to change a different turning point in history, the fall of Rome, the assassination of Julius Caesar, or the last stand at the Alamo, tell me which one in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.